I went to bed every night thinking that if I was lucky enough to get to sleep, that I wouldn't wake up in the morning.
I really struggled, and I was at that stage where I was very anxious. So every comment, every message, I was always ready to pounce.
Eventually kind of got to the point where I realised that I couldn't continue like that because of how much it was affecting me. Like, I felt sick all the time.
I mean, I remember talking to my parents and just saying, I think my brain is broken.
So how would you describe your experience with anxiety?
For me, it's almost like if anyone has ever fainted, kind of like that feeling of it coming up on you. I get like this pain in my chest and it feels like I'm struggling to breathe and everything just kind of gets louder.
I always felt like I was on the verge constantly, and I was at an 8 and I would go to a 10, whereas normally when you're feeling okay, you'd sit at a 2. Like, it's normal to feel a little bit anxious or worried or overwhelmed, but that's when you said that, I could relate to it so much.
So how do you manage your anxiety?
I totally avoid all situations, and I think that I make them out to be bigger than they are.
When did you first experience anxiety?
I feel like I was in secondary school, I was a kid, and I didn't know that what I was experiencing was anxiety. And I didn't have the vocabulary at the time to understand, you know, what anxiety was, if I was feeling sad, if I was feeling stressed. It was this sort of pent-up kind of emotion, this, that it wound up being kind of little outbursts here and there, as opposed to feeling a constant sense of anxiety. It would build up and then explode.
When I was about 25 and in Australia, I was like, okay, I actually want to find out what's going on. So when I did come home eventually, I went to the doctor and I was put on medication because I was at that point, similar to where you were, where it was like the top of the eruption of the volcano nearly. And I couldn't manage my day-to-day life, so went on to some medication for anxiety and then went to see somebody.
What was the point in your journey, for want of a better term, where it really hit you that this needed addressing?
The run-up to Christmas, the first year of lockdown, I started to feel it building and building and building to the point where I couldn't get myself out of it. And I was like, wait a minute, I'm already on medication. I'm already doing all the holistic stuff. What do I do now? And I was like, it's okay, we'll get through it. I think about 3-4 days later, I had my first panic attack in 6 months. And I thought I was so past panic attacks. And I couldn't believe I was back to that point. Before I went on medication, I had wrote my will. I had wrote letters to the children. I had taken videos for the children. And I went to bed every night thinking that if I was lucky enough to get to sleep, that I wouldn't wake up in the morning.
I was sitting on the floor in my bedroom in this apartment in Leeds, and I just broke. And I remember that was my first real breaking point when I called my mother and was honest with her for the first time about, as an adult, still dealing with this and telling her I really needed help.
Was this the first time since you were a teenager and you went down and you said, I think my brain is broken?
Yeah. So I was 21, 22, sitting in a room in Leeds, and she knew something was up. She knew I was getting distant. She wasn't sure what exactly was happening, and I was always a little bit poor at communication. I've gotten better since, but this was the first time I went to my mother and I said, I'm really not good. I'm in a really dark place, and I don't know what to do about it. And it was just, again, having it witnessed and having someone say, okay, that's actually okay. It's okay to feel that way. Do you want to come home? You can come home, you don't have to stay in Leeds, you can come home if you want. And being told you have options and you have control in that moment is so helpful.
So did anxiety affect your sporting career?
Yeah, it would have. So in 2017, kind of when everything got really bad and I got extremely anxious, I actually took a few weeks away from playing football, and I was really lucky that my manager at the time with Dublin was incredibly understanding and gave me the space that you need. I didn't feel under pressure to like kind of suddenly get well.
My anxiety has a lot to do with, yes, it kind of lingered on from postnatal depression, but as a woman, I've always been the type of person that puts a lot of pressure on herself. Society's perception of what we should be as maybe women or mothers, again, retrospectively looking back, I put that on myself.
Yeah.
And I was looking at social media going, that's what I should be, because that's what they are. Joan's down there making banana bread and her children look absolutely gorgeous and her husband's got a gym out in the backyard and they're just the best family ever. And I'm like, I'm losing my mind.
Yeah.
I can't cope with this.
Does social media affect your anxiety?
Yeah, massively it does. Last year, I really struggled and I was at that stage where I was very anxious. So every comment, every message, I was always ready to pounce and I was waiting for somebody to say something. And I'm very open and I'm not that private when it comes to my social media. So I kind of just say whatever I want to say. And there's always people that are going to have something to say about it and not be happy about a certain situation. So there was a point where I was like, oh, I just want to throw the towel in, just go get an office job, just give it all up. Do you think there's less of a stigma now around anxiety?
For me, what really resonated with me was like kind of female athletes coming out and speaking about their experiences, because I suppose certainly in American society, and often a lot of cultures, like athletes are very much put on a pedestal as like, you know, these like high achievers that never have any struggles.
Yeah.
Well, it was an awful situation for Simone Biles. Things like the Olympics, her coming out and saying, actually, I'm not in a position to compete and I'm going to put myself and my safety first.
Yeah.
That was really important.
Yeah.
Do you feel like there's a responsibility on you as someone who is online on TikTok and all of that, talking about mental health and talking about that? Do you feel like there's a responsibility on you to have all the answers?
Whenever I talk about my mental health journey, I never want anybody to take it verbatim. Yes, relate to the symptoms and the journey up to me discovering that I have anxiety, but you and I are completely different.
I had people, you know, posting saying, oh, you always look so happy when you're singing. And there came a point, I guess, where I was like, that's not an honest reflection of what my life looks like. If I'm going to have people looking at me and modelling themselves on me, I don't want anyone thinking that it's an easy ride, because it's not. The reality of life as an artist is you're going to deal with a lot of anxiety, a lot of self-doubt, a lot of stress. And when you're someone with all of those natural parts of being a human and being an artist, on top of actually also having anxiety, it's a wonderful combination. But I suppose I was approached by Limerick Mental Health Association to be an ambassador for them at one point.
Oh.
And I kind of said to myself, if I'm going to do this, I want to do it right. Having social anxiety, being anxious, doesn't mean you can't play at festivals, doesn't mean you can't be on TV, doesn't mean people in your industry are going to judge you or not give you the gig. It just means you're a person.
Exactly.
And you're dealing with what so many other people are dealing with, and I needed other people to know that too. I needed to be that person for someone else. So I guess I just decided I was going to sacrifice this much of my privacy so that someone else would have the confidence to pursue a career in whatever field they're in and handle everything else that goes with it.
Or just be human,
Yeah.
as you say.
Yeah.
Do you find it rewarding?
It's really rewarding knowing that someone else doesn't have to go through what I go through or what I did go through when I started out. You don't have to go through it on your own.